Tanisha Johnson looked at the clock on the hospital wall and felt her heart beat faster. It was already 9:15 a.m. She had to be in court at 10 o'clock a.m., and the courthouse was 30 minutes away. There was no time to go home and change clothes. "Nurse Johnson, can you help with one more patient before you go?" Dr. Roberts called from down the hall. Tanisha had already worked 12 hours straight. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and her eyes felt heavy. But when Dr. Roberts told her about the young boy who had just come in after a bad car crash, she couldn't say no. "I'll be right there," she said, putting her bag down. The boy was only 8 years old. His small body looked even smaller on the big hospital bed. His parents were in another room, both hurt from the crash. Tanisha held his hand while Dr. Roberts checked him. "You're going to be okay," she told the scared child. "I promise." It took 45 minutes to make sure the boy was stable. By the time Tanisha left his room, it was already 10:05 a.m. She was late for court. "I have to go now," she told the head nurse. "I need to testify about that hit-and-run accident I saw last month." Go," the head nurse said. "And thank you for staying to help the boy." Tanisha ran to her car. She had been the only witness to a bad car accident 4 weeks ago. A man had been crossing the street when a car hit him and drove away. Tanisha had stopped to help the man and called 911. She had seen the car that hit him and remembered the license plate. Now she had to tell the court what she saw. As she drove to the courthouse, she looked down at her blue scrubs. They had a few spots of blood on them from helping the boy. She had planned to go home and put on nice clothes for court, but now there was no time. She hoped the judge would understand. Tanisha ran up the courthouse steps at 10:25 a.m. Her heart was racing as she pushed open the heavy doors and rushed down the hall to Courtroom 3. When she opened the door, everyone turned to look at her. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said to the bailiff. "I'm Tanisha Johnson, here to testify in the Parker hit-and-run case." The bailiff pointed to a seat, and Tanisha sat down quickly. The victim's family smiled at her from across the room. Mr. Parker was in a wheelchair now because of his injuries. 10 minutes later, the lawyer called her name. "The state calls Tanisha Johnson to the stand." Tanisha stood up and walked to the front of the courtroom. She could feel everyone looking at her blue scrubs with the small blood spots. As she raised her right hand to swear to tell the truth, she noticed Judge William Sanders staring at her clothes with a deep frown. After she sat in the witness chair, but before the lawyer could ask any questions, the judge held up his hand to stop everything. "Ms. Johnson," Judge Sanders said in a cold voice that filled the quiet room, "what exactly do you think you're doing, coming into my courtroom dressed like that?" Tanisha blinked in surprise. "Your Honor, those clothes," the judge said, pointing at her scrubs. "This is a court of law, not a hospital. Do you think so little of these proceedings that you couldn't bother to dress properly?" Tanisha felt her face grow hot as everyone in the courtroom stared at her. The lawyer who had called her looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "I apologize for my appearance, Your Honor," Tanisha began, her voice steady despite her embarrassment. "I just finished a 12-hour night shift at Memorial Hospital and—" "I don't care if you worked a week straight," the judge cut her off. "Court protocol requires proper attire. Not," he waved his hand at her, "whatever this is." Tanisha took a deep breath. She was tired, hungry, and now being shamed in front of a room full of people. But as she looked at Mr. Parker in his wheelchair, she knew she had to stay and tell what she saw. She straightened her back and prepared to respond to the judge. Tanisha looked at Judge Sanders. His face was stern, and his eyes were cold. She knew she had two choices. She could apologize again and feel ashamed, or she could stand up for herself. She chose the second option. "Your Honor," Tanisha said in a clear, strong voice, "I understand the importance of court rules, but I came here straight from saving lives." The judge frowned deeper. "That does not excuse." "Please, let me finish," Tanisha said respectfully but firmly. "Last night, I helped deliver twins when their mother came to the ER in labor. Then I helped an old man who couldn't breathe. And just before coming here, I helped a little boy who was in a car crash. She pointed to the small spots on her scrubs. This is from helping that boy. His parents are badly hurt, and he was alone and scared. I stayed with him until he was stable. That's why I'm late. That's why I'm wearing these clothes. Tanisha took a deep breath and continued. I could have changed clothes and been on time. I could have left that boy crying alone. But I made a choice to help him first, knowing I might look bad in your court. I'm sorry if that seems disrespectful to you, but I don't think helping a child is ever the wrong choice. The courtroom was completely silent. Judge Sanders stared at her, his mouth slightly open. He seemed shocked that she had spoken back to him. Then, from the back of the room, someone started to clap. It was Mr. Parker, the hit-and-run victim. Even though it was hard for him in his wheelchair, he was clapping for Tanisha. His wife joined him, then his lawyer, and soon everyone in the courtroom was clapping. Judge Sanders banged his gavel. Order in the court, he shouted, but the clapping continued. People were now standing up. Some were even cheering. A court officer was smiling as he half-heartedly tried to quiet people down. When the noise finally died down, Judge Sanders cleared his throat. His face was red, and he looked uncomfortable. Ms. Johnson, he said, his voice softer now. While I still believe in court protocol, I appreciate your dedication to your patients. The court will hear your testimony now. The lawyer smiled at Tanisha and began asking questions about the hit-and-run accident. Tanisha told how she had seen Mr. Parker crossing the street when a red car hit him and drove away. She remembered the license plate because it had her mother's birthday numbers in it. I ran to help Mr. Parker, she explained. I checked his pulse and breathing, then called 911. I stayed with him until the ambulance came, talking to him so he wouldn't go into shock. As she spoke, she noticed the jury members nodding with respect. Even Judge Sanders was listening carefully now, looking at her with new eyes. When she finished her testimony, the defense lawyer stood up to question her. He was representing the driver of the red car. Ms. Johnson, he said with a smirk, how can we trust your memory of the license plate when you were so focused on helping the victim? Tanisha didn't get upset. I'm trained to stay calm in emergencies and notice details. It's part of being a nurse. Before I went to help Mr. Parker, I made sure to remember that plate. It was JLB 427. My mother's birthday is April 27th, so the numbers stuck in my mind. The defense lawyer tried to ask more tricky questions, but Tanisha stayed calm and sure. She knew what she saw, and she wasn't going to back down. When she was done, the judge said, "Thank you, Ms. Johnson. You may step down." As Tanisha walked back to her seat, Mr. Parker reached out and touched her arm. "Thank you," he whispered, "not just for today, but for helping me that day. You're the reason they caught the man who hit me." Tanisha smiled at him. "I was just doing what was right, just like today." She sat down, feeling proud. Yes, she was tired. Yes, she was still in her work clothes. But she had stood up for herself and for what was right. And somehow, that made all the difference. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of what her brave words would start. After court ended that day, Tanisha was tired. She had been awake for over 24 hours. All she wanted was to go home and sleep. But as she walked out of the courthouse, a young woman with a phone stopped her. "Ms. Johnson, I'm Lisa Chen from the City News. Someone told me what happened in court today. Can I ask you a few questions?" Tanisha was surprised. "I don't think there's much to tell. I just did my job." "But you stood up to Judge Sanders. He's known for being very strict about rules. No one ever speaks back to him," Lisa said, looking excited. Tanisha didn't know what to say. She hadn't planned to make a scene. She just wanted to explain why she was wearing scrubs. "Look, I need to get home and rest before my next shift," she said kindly. "I'm not trying to be a hero or anything. I was just being honest." Lisa nodded, and gave Tanisha her card. "If you change your mind about talking, please call me. I think your story is important." Tanisha drove home, took a quick shower, and fell into bed. She was asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. 6 hours later, her phone rang. It was her friend Keisha. "Girl, have you seen Facebook? You're famous," Keisha said loudly. "What are you talking about?" Tanisha asked, still half asleep. "Someone in the courtroom recorded what happened with you and the judge. They posted it online. The video has thousands of views already." Tanisha sat up in bed, now wide awake. "They did what?" She quickly found the video online. Someone had filmed her exchange with Judge Sanders on their phone. The video showed her standing tall in her scrubs, explaining why she had come to court straight from work. It showed the moment when everyone stood up and clapped for her. The video already had over 50,000 views and was growing fast. Comments poured in from people all over. "This nurse is a real hero. Someone finally stood up to that awful judge. She saved lives and spoke truth to power. We need more people like her." Tanisha didn't know how to feel. She had never wanted attention like this. She just did what she thought was right. Her phone rang again. This time, it was the hospital director. "Tanisha, I've seen the video," the director said. Tanisha's heart sank. Would she get in trouble at work now? "I want you to know that we are all very proud of you," the director continued. "You represented our hospital with dignity and showed what it means to be a dedicated nurse. Well done." Tanisha felt relief wash over her. "Thank you, Director. I was just being honest." "Your honesty is making a difference. The local news wants to interview you, and several nursing organizations have called asking about you. They want you to speak at their events." Tanisha couldn't believe what she was hearing. "All this because I wore scrubs to court?" "No," the director said. "All this because you stood up for yourself and for what nurses do every day. You showed people the real value of our work." That evening, Tanisha got another surprise. A letter arrived from the courthouse. With shaking hands, she opened it, afraid it might be some kind of penalty for speaking back to the judge. Instead, it was a formal apology from Judge Sanders. "I want to express my sincere regret for how I addressed you in court," the letter said. "Your dedication to your patients and your community is admirable. You have reminded me that true respect is not shown through clothes, but through actions. I have much to learn from your example." The letter went on to say that the judge was starting a new program to make courts more accessible and understanding of emergency workers like nurses, firefighters, and paramedics who might need to testify after their shifts. Tanisha sat down, holding the letter. Tears filled her eyes. She had never meant to start anything big. She had just wanted to do her job as a nurse and as a witness. But somehow her simple honesty had touched something in people. Her phone buzzed with another call. It was Lisa Chen from the news again. This time, Tanisha answered. Maybe her story could help other nurses or change how people saw healthcare workers. "Hello, Lisa," she said. "I think I'm ready to talk now." The next morning, Tanisha sat in the small TV studio. Lisa Chen had arranged for her to be on the morning news show. Tanisha wore her nurse uniform. She had thought about wearing something fancy, but decided her uniform showed who she really was. "We're on in 5 minutes," a young man with headphones told her. "Are you nervous?" Tanisha nodded. "I've never been on TV before." "Just be yourself," he said with a kind smile. "That's what people want to see." Soon, Tanisha was sitting across from the news anchor, a friendly woman named Sarah Jones. With us today is Tanisha Johnson, the nurse whose powerful response to a judge has gone viral. Sarah said to the camera, "Tanisha, thank you for joining us." "Thank you for having me," Tanisha said. Her hands were shaking a little, but she kept her voice steady. "The video of you standing up to Judge Sanders has over 1 million views now," Sarah said. "Did you expect this kind of reaction?" "Not at all," Tanisha said honestly. "I just wanted to explain why I was wearing scrubs in court. I never meant to cause a scene." But you spoke up when many people would have just apologized and felt ashamed, Sarah pointed out. Where did you find that courage? Tanisha thought for a moment. My grandmother raised me. She always said, never be ashamed of honest work. Being a nurse isn't just my job. It's who I am. Those scrubs mean something to me. Tell us about your work as a nurse, Sarah said. Tanisha's face lit up. I've been a nurse for 8 years. I work in the emergency room. Every day is different. Sometimes it's hard, but helping people when they need it most, there's nothing better than that. As Tanisha talked about her work, she forgot to be nervous. She told stories about helping babies come into the world, holding the hands of scared patients, and working long nights during busy times. She spoke from her heart. What would you say to other people who feel they can't speak up when treated unfairly? Sarah asked. I would say, know your worth, Tanisha answered. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to the judge, but I know the value of what I do, and I couldn't pretend to be ashamed of it. We all have the right to be treated with respect. After the interview, Tanisha's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Nurses from all over the country called to thank her. Many told stories of times they had been looked down on because of their work clothes or treated as less important than doctors. You said what we've all wanted to say for years, one nurse told her. 3 days later, Tanisha was back at work. She thought things would go back to normal, but she was wrong. Patients recognized her from TV and the internet. Some even asked for selfies with her. You're the nurse who stood up to that mean judge, one little girl said when Tanisha came to check her temperature. During her lunch break, Tanisha got a surprise visitor. It was Mr. Parker, the hit-and-run victim. He was still in his wheelchair, but he looked stronger than he had in court. I wanted to thank you in person, he said. The jury found the driver guilty. He's going to jail for what he did to me. Your testimony was what made the difference. I'm so glad, Tanisha said. How are you feeling? Getting better every day, he smiled. My doctor says I might walk again with enough therapy. As they talked, Tanisha's boss came over. Tanisha, you have a phone call in the office, she said. It's from the mayor's office. Tanisha's eyes widened. The mayor? What does he want with me? They wouldn't say, but they mentioned something about a Community Hero Award. Tanisha couldn't believe what was happening, all because she had worn her scrubs to court and spoken honestly about her work. As she walked to the office to take the call, she thought about how one small moment of standing up for yourself could grow into something much bigger. She picked up the phone, wondering what would happen next in this unexpected journey. Hello, this is Tanisha Johnson speaking, she said. Hello, Ms. Johnson. This is Robert Wilson from the mayor's office, said the voice on the phone. The mayor would like to honor you at our annual City Heroes ceremony next week. You've become a symbol of dignity and dedication in our community. Tanisha was speechless for a moment. That's very kind, but I don't think I did anything special. The mayor disagrees, Robert said. Your story has touched many people. It's not just about standing up to the judge. It's about showing respect for essential workers like nurses. After Tanisha hung up, she sat quietly in the office. Part of her wanted to say no to the award. She didn't feel like a hero. But another part of her thought about all the nurses who had called to thank her for speaking up. Maybe this wasn't just about her anymore. That evening, when Tanisha got home, there was a letter waiting for her. It was from a nursing school. They wanted her to speak to their students about respect in healthcare. Similar requests had come in from other schools and hospitals across the country. What am I supposed to say to all these people? She asked her cat, Midnight, who just purred and rubbed against her leg. The next day, Tanisha had a surprise visitor at the hospital. It was Judge Sanders himself. Ms. Johnson, he said, looking uncomfortable. I wanted to apologize to you in person. Tanisha was shocked to see him there. Several other nurses stopped what they were doing to watch. That's not necessary, Your Honor, she said. Your letter was enough. No, it wasn't, he insisted. I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I've been a judge for 20 years, and I've always believed that formal clothes show respect for the court. But you taught me that true respect isn't about what you wear. It's about how you act and what you contribute. Judge Sanders looked around the busy emergency room. I've never been in a hospital except as a patient. I never understood what you all do every day. He paused. My daughter is in nursing school. After seeing that video, she called me and, well, she wasn't happy with me. Tanisha couldn't help but smile a little. Family can be our best teachers sometimes. Indeed, the judge said. Anyway, I wanted you to know that I started working with the court system to change our rules for emergency workers. No one should have to choose between helping people and following court dress codes. After the judge left, Tanisha's boss called her into the office. The hospital board wants to make you the face of our new recruitment campaign, she said. They think your story will inspire more people to become nurses. Tanisha felt overwhelmed. All this happened because I wore scrubs to court. No, her boss said firmly. All this happened because you stood up for yourself and for all nurses with grace and honesty. You showed people what nurses really do and why it matters. A week later, Tanisha stood on a stage at City Hall. She wore her nurse uniform, freshly pressed. The mayor placed a medal around her neck as cameras flashed. Tanisha Johnson represents the best of our city, the mayor said. She reminds us that true heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear scrubs. When it was Tanisha's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and looked at the crowd. She saw other nurses in uniform. She saw Mr. Parker in his wheelchair, smiling proudly. She even saw Judge Sanders sitting quietly in the back. I never meant to start anything big, she began. I was just doing my job as a nurse and as a witness in court. But sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing up for many others too. She touched her nurse's badge. Being a nurse isn't just what I do, it's who I am. These scrubs represent years of learning, hard work, and caring for people on their worst days. They aren't just clothes. They're a uniform, just as worthy of respect as any judge's robe or police officer's badge. The room burst into applause. As Tanisha looked out at all the faces, she realized something important. One person speaking their truth could start a wave of change that reached far beyond anything they could imagine. And this was just the beginning. 1 month after the award ceremony, Tanisha was back at her normal nursing job. But things were not the same as before. She had become something of a local celebrity. Patients often recognized her and asked for selfies. New nurses looked up to her. The hospital even put her picture on a big poster in the lobby with the words, "Caring with Courage." On a busy Tuesday morning, Tanisha was checking on an elderly patient when her boss called her to the office again. "Tanisha, you got a letter from Washington, D.C., her boss said, handing her an official-looking envelope. Tanisha opened it with shaking hands. It was from a national nursing organization. They'd wanted her to speak at their yearly meeting in Washington. They also wanted to give her the Nurse of the Year award. "This is too much," Tanisha said, sitting down hard in a chair. "I'm just a regular nurse. I didn't do anything special." Her boss smiled. "Sometimes the most special thing is just being honest about who you are and what you do. You've helped people see nurses in a new way." That weekend, Tanisha visited her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died. Grandma Johnson was 85 years old now and lived in a small house on the edge of town. "There's my famous granddaughter," Grandma Johnson said, hugging Tanisha tightly. "I'm not famous, Grandma," Tanisha said, but she smiled. "Girl, I saw you on TV. My whole church is talking about you. Pastor even mentioned you in his sermon last Sunday." They sat on the porch swing, drinking sweet tea like they always did. Tanisha told her grandmother about the award in Washington. "You know what this reminds me of?" Grandma Johnson said, "When I was young, I worked as a cleaner at the city hospital. Back then, they didn't let black women be nurses. One day, a doctor yelled at me for being in a patient's room. But the patient spoke up for me, said I was kinder than anyone else there." Tanisha held her grandmother's hand. You never told me that story. Some things hurt too much to talk about, Grandma Johnson said. But when I saw you standing up in that courtroom, not letting anyone make you feel small, I thought, that's my granddaughter. That's what I raised her to be. Tears filled Tanisha's eyes. I wish I could do more. You already are, her grandmother said. Now young black girls will see you and think, I can be a nurse too. I can speak up too. That's how change happens. The next week, Tanisha got a surprising call from Dr. Roberts, the doctor she had worked with on the day she went to court. Tanisha, remember that little boy from the car crash? The one you helped before going to court? Of course, Tanisha said. How is he doing? He's going home tomorrow. His parents too. They all recovered well. But here's the amazing part. They saw you on TV. They want to thank you in person. The next day, Tanisha met with the family. The little boy, whose name was Marcus, ran up and hugged her. You're the nurse who saved me, he said, and you're the one who stood up to the mean judge. His mother took Tanisha's hands. When Marcus saw you on TV, he got so excited. He told everyone in the hospital, that's my nurse. Now he says he wants to be a nurse when he grows up. Tanisha knelt down to Marcus's level. Is that true? You want to be a nurse? Marcus nodded eagerly. I want to help people like you did, and I want to be brave like you too. His words touched Tanisha deeply. She had never thought about being a role model. She had just done what felt right. That evening, as Tanisha drove home, she thought about all that had happened because she wore scrubs to court that day. She had stood up for herself and her profession. She had inspired other nurses. She had helped change court rules. And now she had inspired a child to consider nursing. Small actions, she realized, could start big changes. All it took was the courage to speak your truth. When she got home, there was a message on her answering machine. It was from a national TV show. They wanted to interview her for a special program about healthcare heroes. Tanisha smiled. Her journey was far from over. 2 weeks later, Tanisha sat in a bright TV studio in New York City. She had never been to New York before. The trip, the fancy hotel, and the car that picked her up from the airport. It all felt like a dream. 5 minutes until we're live, a woman with a clipboard told her. Tanisha took a deep breath. She was about to be on Good Morning America, one of the biggest TV shows in the country. Millions of people would see her. The thought made her stomach flip. You'll do great, said the makeup lady who had fixed Tanisha's face earlier. Just be yourself. That's why people love you. Soon, Tanisha was sitting across from famous TV host Sandra King. Today we have a special guest, Sandra told the camera. Tanisha Johnson became a viral sensation when she stood up to a judge who criticized her for wearing scrubs in his courtroom. Tanisha, welcome to the show. Thank you for having me, Tanisha said. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. Your story has touched millions of people, Sandra said. But I heard that this isn't the first time you faced judgment about your work clothes. Can you tell us about that? Tanisha was surprised by the question. Well, yes, she said slowly. When I first became a nurse, I took the bus to work. One day, an older woman moved away from me on the bus and said, I don't want to sit near someone covered in germs. She thought my scrubs were dirty, even though they were clean. How did that make you feel? Sandra asked. It hurt, Tanisha admitted. But mostly I felt sad that she didn't understand what nurses do. We're very careful about not spreading germs. That's part of our job. And now you're speaking up about respect for healthcare workers, Sandra said. What changes would you like to see? Tanisha thought about this. I'd like people to see beyond the uniform. Whether it's scrubs or a fast food uniform or a janitor's clothes, the person wearing it deserves respect. That's what I want people to remember. The interview continued for 10 minutes. Tanisha found herself talking about healthcare, respect in the workplace, and even race and gender in nursing. She spoke from her heart, using simple words but sharing deep truths. After the show, Sandra took Tanisha's hands. "You're a natural," she said. "Have you ever thought about doing more TV work? We could use a healthcare expert like you." Tanisha was shocked. "Me? On TV regularly? I don't know anything about that." "Just think about it," Sandra said. "My producer will call you." That afternoon, Tanisha had time to see some of New York before her flight home. As she walked through Times Square, a young woman stopped her. "Excuse me, aren't you the nurse from TV this morning?" the woman asked. "Yes, that's me," Tanisha said, still not used to being recognized. "I'm in nursing school," the woman said. "I just wanted to say thank you. Some of my family thinks nursing isn't an important job. They'd wanted me to be a doctor or lawyer, but you showed that nurses matter too." Tanisha gave the young woman a hug. "Keep going," she said. "The world needs good nurses." Back at her hotel, Tanisha found an email from the National Nursing Organization. They didn't just want her to speak at their meeting anymore. Now they wanted her to join a special team working to improve how nurses are treated in hospitals and courts across the country. On the plane ride home, Tanisha looked out the window at the clouds below. 6 weeks ago, she was just a regular nurse doing her job. Now she was being asked to speak on TV, change policies, and be a voice for nurses everywhere. It was scary. It was exciting. It was not at all what she had planned for her life. When the plane landed, Tanisha turned on her phone. She had 50 new messages. One was from Judge Sanders. "Ms. Johnson," his message said, "I'm working with the state Supreme Court on new rules for essential workers in courtrooms. Would you be willing to help? Your input would be valuable." Tanisha smiled to herself. Who would have thought that being scolded for wearing scrubs would lead to helping change the law? She texted back, "I would be honored to help, Your Honor." 3 months after her TV interview, Tanisha sat in a large meeting room at the state Supreme Court building. Around the table were judges, lawyers, and other important people. Tanisha was the only nurse there. "Thank you all for coming," said Judge Sanders, who led the meeting. "We're here to talk about new court rules for essential workers. Ms. Johnson's experience has shown us that our current rules need to change." Tanisha felt strange sitting next to Judge Sanders. The same man who had scolded her was now asking for her help. Life was full of surprises. "Ms. Johnson, would you like to share your thoughts?" Judge Sanders asked. Tanisha took a deep breath. "I think courts need to understand that many essential workers can't change clothes before coming to court. Nurses, firefighters, paramedics, and others often come straight from saving lives. We should be allowed to wear our work clothes if needed." An older judge frowned. "But court has always had standards. We can't just let people wear anything." "With all respect," Tanisha said calmly, "these aren't just anything. These are professional uniforms. People wear them while doing important jobs." Another judge, a woman, nodded. "I agree with Ms. Johnson. My daughter is a paramedic. Sometimes she works 24-hour shifts. We should make allowances for these situations." They talked for 2 hours. Some people agreed with Tanisha, others didn't. But by the end, they had made progress. The court would create new rules allowing essential workers to wear clean work uniforms when coming directly from work. "This is just the beginning," Judge Sanders told Tanisha after the meeting. "We're looking at other ways to make courts more accessible for working people. You've started something important here." The next day, Tanisha went to the local nursing school to give a talk. The room was packed with students eager to hear from her. "I didn't plan to become known for standing up to a judge," she told them. "I was just trying to do my job as a nurse and as a witness. But I learned something important that day. Sometimes you have to speak up, even when it's scary." A young man raised his hand. "Did you know what would happen when you spoke up?" "No," Tanisha said honestly. "I was just trying to explain why I was wearing scrubs. I never imagined it would lead to TV shows and changing laws." "Were you afraid?" a girl in the front row asked. "Yes," Tanisha admitted. "My heart was beating so fast. But being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared. After her talk, many students stayed to talk to her. One young woman, about 20 years old, waited until everyone else had left. "Ms. Johnson," she said quietly, "I almost quit nursing school last month. It's so hard, and my family doesn't support me. They wanted me to be a lawyer. But when I saw you on TV, standing up for nurses, I decided to stay. Thank you for that." Tanisha hugged the young woman. Never give up on something that matters to you. The world needs nurses who care. That evening, Tanisha got a call from the hospital director. "Tanisha, I have some news," the director said. "The hospital board wants to create a new position, Director of Staff Advocacy. It would be your job to make sure all hospital workers are treated with respect and have what they need to do their jobs well. Are you interested?" Tanisha was shocked. "But I've never done anything like that before." "You've been doing it for months," the director said. "Every time you speak up about respect for nurses, you're advocating for staff. This would just make it official. You could help change things from the inside." Tanisha thought about all the nurses who had called to thank her. She thought about the nursing students looking up to her. She thought about her grandmother who wasn't allowed to be a nurse because of her skin color. "Yes," she said, "I'm interested." When she hung up the phone, Tanisha looked at her nurse uniform hanging on her closet door. Those scrubs had started all of this. Just a simple blue uniform that meant so much to her. She never could have imagined where wearing those scrubs to court would lead her. But now she had a chance to make real changes for nurses and other workers. And it all started because she wasn't afraid to speak her truth. 1 year had passed since that day in court. Tanisha stood at a podium in a large hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C. In front of her sat over 500 nurses from across the country. They were there for the National Nursing Conference, and Tanisha was the main speaker. She wore her nurse's uniform, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Those blue scrubs were a symbol now, a symbol of pride, of hard work, and of speaking up. "A year ago, I was just doing my job," Tanisha began. "I worked a long night shift, helped a child who was hurt, and then rushed to court still wearing these scrubs. I had no idea that moment would change my life." She told the story they had all heard before, but she also shared new parts, how scared she had felt, how her hands had shaken, how she had almost apologized and sat down in shame. "But something inside me said, 'Stand tall. Speak your truth. These clothes are not something to be ashamed of.'" Tanisha looked out at the sea of faces. Many were nodding. Some had tears in their eyes. "In this past year, I've seen amazing changes," she continued. 28 states have now changed their court rules to allow essential workers to wear their uniforms. Our hospital has created new policies to support staff. And nursing school applications are up 15% nationwide. She smiled. "I'd like to think that's partly because young people are seeing that nurses can make a difference, not just at a patient's bedside, but in society too." As Tanisha finished her speech, the room erupted in a standing ovation. The applause was even louder than it had been in the courtroom that day. After the speech, Tanisha met with a small group of nurses who had started a national movement called Respect in Scrubs. They worked to improve how healthcare workers were treated in all settings. "You inspired all of this," said a nurse from Texas. "We now have chapters in 47 states." Later that evening, at a special dinner, Tanisha was surprised when Judge Sanders walked into the room. He looked different in regular clothes instead of his black robe. "I hope you don't mind that I came," he said. "I wanted to see you receive your award." "I'm glad you're here," Tanisha said honestly. "None of this would have happened if you hadn't scolded me that day." The judge shook his head. "No, Ms. Johnson. None of this would have happened if you hadn't had the courage to respond the way you did." During dinner, Tanisha sat next to a woman in a neat business suit. The woman introduced herself as Congresswoman Davis. "I'm working on a bill about workplace respect," she told Tanisha. "It would protect workers from being discriminated against based on their professional uniforms. We're calling it the Essential Workers Respect Act. We'd love your help with it." Tanisha was amazed. A national law inspired by what happened to her. It seemed unbelievable. When Tanisha went up to receive her award, National Nurse Leader of the Year, she brought someone special with her, her grandmother. "This is the woman who taught me to never be ashamed of honest work," Tanisha told the crowd. When she was young, she couldn't become a nurse because of the color of her skin, but she never stopped believing that things could change. Tanisha held up her award. "This belongs to her too, and to every person who puts on a uniform, any uniform, and does their job with pride and care, no matter how others might judge them." As Tanisha and her grandmother left the stage, a young girl, about 10 years old, stopped them. "I want to be just like you when I grow up," she told Tanisha. "A nurse?" Tanisha asked with a smile. The girl shook her head. "No, someone who isn't afraid to stand up and speak the truth." Later that night, back in her hotel room, Tanisha stood by the window looking out at the lights of Washington, D.C. She thought about how far she had come from that day in court. From one nurse in scrubs to a voice for workers everywhere. She picked up her phone and looked at an old photo from the hospital, taken before any of this happened. Just her in her scrubs, smiling after a long shift. She had been proud of her work even then, before the fame and the speeches and the awards. That was the real lesson, she realized. True respect starts with respecting yourself and your own work. Everything else follows from there. Tanisha touched the nurse's pin on her uniform. Tomorrow she would go back to her hospital and continue her work as both a nurse and an advocate. She had 2 jobs now, but one mission: to care for others and speak up for what was right. And she would do it all wearing her scrubs with pride. The end.